my wife and I and our family, we've been here 12 years in the Sahuarita area, and it has been exciting to see our town grow. It's been exciting also to see our church grow. And I know you're excited to be a part of it. By the way, if you moved here to Sahuarita and you don't want things to grow, you came to the wrong town, okay? You're like, this is one of the fastest growing towns in Arizona over these years. But I thought it'd be fun just to kick things off here. If you just turn to someone next to you, it's like a fun thing. What do you most look forward to? What would you love to see new here? How would you like to see something in the town or here in our church grow? What do you most look forward to in the future? Why don't you turn next someone next to you to share that with them? All right, so I guess we should have had the mayor back here today. You know, we have a lot of things that we could share with them. All right, so mine is like, there's no doubt at all about mine. Okay, here it is. You ready? All right. I already asked my wife if we could go there for Valentine's. Okay, I just want to let you know. And here's the next. That's like the new style of them, so it'll fit in great with our town. We can have a brand new Outback. Okay. Whenever I meet new people here in our town or someone new has moved into the area or come here to our church, I try to explain to them what it was like 12 years ago when I moved here. Some of you have been here much longer than that, a few of you. And I try to say, you know, there was no Fry's. There was no Shell station. They're the slowest pumps on the whole earth. But anyway, gas pumps. But anyway, there was no Shell station there, nowhere to get. We had to go down to Duval Mine Road, and there used to be a Bash's down there. For those of you who remember, that was like my favorite grocery store. And then there was a small Walmart. There was no super Walmart back in those days. And in Rancho Sahuarita, there were just houses around the lake, and that was kind of it. And our house was kind of in the middle of where Rancho Sahuarita is now, and there were no houses to the north of us at all. We had a mountain view behind our house because there were no houses behind us. We were just kind of out there by ourselves. It's incredible. And in fact, there was no Rancho Sahuarita Boulevard as we know it. The only way into Rancho Sahuarita was La Valita Road, and for those of you who remember those things. No Madera Highlands, none of this stuff even existed 12 years ago. It's amazing what has happened. Not only is our town growing and developing, but our church has been growing, and that has been exciting to see. And that's part of what we want to celebrate this morning. So we put together a little photo montage of some things we just want to share.
Pastor Fred came in March of 2005, and one of the first things he wanted to do was get a small group. And so a small group did get started.
How sweet the sound that saved a wretch.
Our first actual practice was December 4th, 2005. Here's a copy of the very first bulletin. And what is important and what I think is so significant is that right here, connect small groups.
Was blind, but now I see. All my foolish crowns, with trembling hands I laid them down, expecting wrath to be poured out, but you placed mercy on my brow. And still my best is nothing less than filthy rags and emptiness. But one drop of blood raised me from death, and you see me through your righteousness. And I'm singing, oh, how sweet, amazing grace.
That if the God of this universe, our Creator, if He were to speak audibly, if He were to actually talk to us and talk to each person in our town, that the very first thing He would say is, I love you.
All my praise goes up as your love comes down. trouble you endure. I'm not afraid, for I am sure, Lord, that you are mine and I'm yours. So I'm singing, oh, how sweet, amazing grace, wraps me in the warm embrace. Oh, my heart rejoiced. I was lost, now found. All my praise goes up as your love comes down. Think about it. What a great day that will be when I stand there at my Savior's feet, singing thank you for all eternity. So all my praise goes up as your love comes down. We sing, oh, how sweet, amazing grace, wraps me in a warm embrace.
Isn't that awesome? So it's great to see our town growing, and even more, I'm so excited that God has grown our church and to experience that and be a part of it. It's incredible. I walk in here on a Sunday. It's amazing what God has done. And I think of, there's people that have moved away over the years and different things have happened, and that's people have gone to be with the Lord, all things, some of those memories that we see there. But it's amazing to think of the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people whose lives have really been impacted by our church. And God has done this. God has grown this church. God is the one who grows things. He's the one who makes life come forth. He's the one that produces life. Sometimes we go through life and we don't really notice it. We aren't thinking about it. But the whole reason that our town is growing, the whole reason that you go outside and you see the trees growing and you see the grass growing, I think it's even going to rain today, I think a little bit, at least somewhere in Tucson, right? It's going to rain. And life is going to come forth, and you look at the animals and you look at the plant life. And the greatest creation of all, of course, are human beings. We're created in God's image so that we too can be creative and we can come up with ideas and make things. And our technology really is all because God created it all. All life and all growth, everything comes from God. God is behind it. It's so exciting as we take notice of what God is doing. And that's what we want to do this morning. The growth of our church has really been God's work. God has done this. And all praise and honor goes to Him. He's the one who brings forth life. The Lord Jesus Christ, His work is ultimately, when eternity is written, is to make everything new, to bring life to everything, so that life will go on and on and on for eternity. He's going to make everything new. He's starting with us. And so we want to celebrate this morning. We want to kick off a really special time in our church. We're calling it Here We Grow, when we are going to recognize what God is doing, that God is growing. Our God grows. Growth that God accomplishes is good. And we need to learn to recognize that. We need to learn to say it. So I want to share with you a couple of important scriptures about God's growing things. If you would turn your Bible to 1 Corinthians chapter 3. And as you're turning there, you may wonder, why in the world are we turning to 1 Corinthians? If you had to think of something that God is growing, when God's alive and active and doing something on this earth, the church in Corinth would not have been at the top of your list of where you would think God was working and God was doing things. If you know anything about this church, they had all kinds of problems. They would fight with each other in the church. They were not mature. In fact, the Apostle Paul says in 1 Corinthians 3, we're going to look at that they're babies, that they need to grow up. He accuses them of being babies. And that's exactly what they were. They were boastful. They would take anything and find a way to fight with each other about it and to boast about it and to try to one-up one another. Their spiritual gifts and what they did in the church, they try to one-up one another about those kinds of things. And they even found a way to make themselves look better about baptism. They began saying, I was baptized by Paul. And another person would say, well, I was baptized by Apollos. Apollos was like a better speaker than the Apostle Paul was. Like, Paul. Well, Paul knew Peter, and Paul knows John, and Paul knows all the apostles back in Jerusalem. I was baptized. It's kind of like in our church if someone said, well, I was baptized by Pastor Fred. Well, I was baptized by Pastor Rick. I was baptized by Pastor Brent, and he has hair. Okay? I know why you guys were all laughing at the video. I get it, all right? It's like my history of my hair loss. It's even spiky and cool. You know what I mean? And I was baptized by Pastor. Well, that's literally what they were doing in this church. Okay? And Paul explains their lives of what they were like before. And they had all kinds of problems. They were suing one another in this church. They were bragging about anything and everything they could come up with. So many problems. And yet Paul writes this about AD 54, 55, and he's going to correct some things, but he says this about this church. I want you to notice what he says. Look at 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 5. He says, what then is Apollos? So they were bragging, I was baptized by Apollos. He says, well, what then is Apollos? And what is Paul? We're nothing more than servants through whom you believed, even as the Lord gave opportunity to each one. We are simply Jesus' servants. We're not any source of boasting that we baptize you or anything like that. We were simply doing the work that Jesus wanted us to do. We're his servants. Wherever he gave us an opportunity to work for him, we did it. I planted. Apollos watered. But God, this is the key phrase, God was causing the growth. So the Apostle Paul gives us this great picture of what God is doing in the church is like growing something. So I brought this so you can see this plant. So when he says, look, I planted the seed. I've got this thing that I use in my backyard to overseed and all that, and it spreads the seed, right? Paul says, look, it was just my role, my responsibility. God gave me this opportunity to plant seed. I planted a seed. For others, it might be that you come along and you water it. And later on in this letter, he begins to explain spiritual gifts in the church. It's not just leaders in the church. Everyone has a spiritual gift. All of us have a role in growing what God is doing and growing people. Right? I brought some fertilizer. Might be somebody's role and job to fertilize it. And some of you here are like, yeah, this is what I want. Right? Some of you, your job is just to, get rid of as many people. No, I'm just kidding. Some of you might be the ones who prune things and say, this is getting a little crazy here, and let's cut this back a little bit, and let's get this thing looking good. And we all have a different part to play, but Paul's point is, notice again, God was causing the growth. What you see there is God's work. It's God's work. Our part is just to be a servant. Our part's just to be a part of it. But when it's all said and done, when you look at it all, human beings, we can't grow a plant. We can't bring life to something. We can't do any of that. That's God's work. God is at work when things are growing. So Paul drives this home to them. And just stop for a second and think about this church. This is the church in Corinth that God has grown. This church was full of recovering pagans, far from God. They had formerly, if you read later in this letter, they had been thieves, jealous of people. They had swindled people. They were former homosexuals. They had cheated on their spouses. There was still all kinds of sexual immorality, and I don't want to go into all of it in this letter if you read through there. They're still boasting and bragging about everything about themselves. I was baptized by Paul. And you know what Paul says about this church that's a little crazy? This church is it looks a little crazy. God grew it. God was causing the growth. God grew this church in Corinth that was a little bit, crazy. But these people had come to believe that Jesus is their Savior. They didn't have all this other stuff figured out. They were baptized, right? They did get baptized by Paul, Apollos. Different people baptized them. Of course, they took that and used it to brag about themselves. They had problems. But they were believers. There was life. But when you look at it and you face what it is, what was God growing there? I mean, let's just be honest about it. It was numbers of people that came to believe in Jesus, but there wasn't a lot of spiritual maturity. In fact, earlier in this same chapter, he says, you're babies. You need to grow up. And of course, that's why Paul wrote this letter. He was trying to correct some things. Let's not be bragging about who baptized us. Let's not stay that way. Let's trim this thing back here. Let's get on track with the things that God wants us to do. Paul didn't just leave them as baby Christians. And you know what? God does that too. God was working through this inspired letter for them and for us today. God grows things, numbers of people, and maturity. But let's just be honest about it. With this church in Corinth, what Paul's writing about here, what God grew is just basically numbers of people. And it was a little out of control. A little like you might walk in and say, this is strange, what's going on here. It was a mess. But when things grow, we shouldn't expect that everything's just going to be easy or smooth. Some churches did better than this church at Corinth. But it's just a part of growth, that there's going to be a little bit of craziness. And let me tell you, what Paul's point is that God did grow it, though. God is a grower of people. And what God does, everything that God does, is good. It's good. And we need to learn to say that as Christians. God grows things. And when God grows things, it's good, and we ought to celebrate it. We ought to be a part of it, too. That's what these next verses get into. Look at verse 7. So then neither the one who plants nor the one who waters is anything. Our part that we're playing in the life of the church, that's nothing to brag about. It's nothing to boast about like they were doing. But again, God who causes the growth. We ought to recognize what God is doing. Praise God. God for what you're doing through us. Paul is really trying to drive this home to me. You see that he repeats it. And then he wraps it up with a picture for them to grasp. Look at verse 8. Now he who plants and he who waters are one. Whatever it is that your role is, and what I'm doing here in the church isn't what you're doing. What you're doing isn't what I'm doing. We all have a part to play, but we're all working for one purpose. We have one goal. We want God to grow his kingdom. We want to see the kingdom of Jesus Christ grow. So whatever our role is, we're really after one purpose, but each will receive his own reward according to his own labor. Paul isn't saying that what we do doesn't matter to God. It's just not something that we should boast about. Our reward for the things that we're doing for Jesus is coming one day. He's going to reward us in his kingdom. Each one of us, notice, each of us has a part to play, and each will receive his own reward according to the work of his own labor. What God has given me to do, and I'm faithful in that, he's going to reward me for it. What God has given you to do, he's going to reward you when you're faithful and you do that work that he's given to you. And look at the final image in verse 9. For we are God's co-workers. We're all like working the farm. We're working the field. You all, the church and the community of people, including new people coming into church, we're all God's field. God is growing something. Another picture of it is it's like he's building a building and he's a master architect. We're God's building, but we are God's field. We are all co-laborers. We're all co-farmers working this field. We all have a work to participate, but when it's all said and done, he's the one who grows it. And when he grows something, it is good. In fact, if you think of it, if we're a field and God is growing it, don't you think he wants to see some growth? Yeah. If he's all given us a role and a work to do to build this farm that he's building, we should be a part of that. He's growing it. In fact, it's kind of irresponsible. We don't deserve any prestige for it, but it would be irresponsible for us not to be a part of what he's growing. So let me tell you this. Our contributing to God's growing and what he's doing in the church is good in his eyes. He's even going to reward us for it one day. I just want to touch an elephant in the room here, because, hey, I know this is the way Christians talk to one another. If you're here this morning, you're not a Christian, well, this is how Christians talk to each other. I just want you to know this. You might even think a little bit this way, or have kind of a tendency this way, or you definitely will have conversations with other Christians who are going to tell you something about it. When you talk, Grace Church is growing and we're excited and things are growing, there are going to be some people that will respond like, that's kind of dangerous. That's kind of dangerous. You know, there could be compromising. Why is it growing? Is it because you're compromising something? Or some people will tell you, your church is too big. They'll just say it. Your church is too big. And that's really strange to me because I look at this church in Corinth, and do you know what was happening there? God was growing it, and it was a little dangerous. We might walk in, some of us here in this church, if we had been in that church in Corinth, we would have gone, oh no, this is compromising, this is crazy, what's going on here? But God grew it. And let me tell you this. You can grow something big the wrong way. Don't misunderstand me. You can grow something big the wrong way, apart from God. Well, let me tell you this. What I've seen over the years is it won't last. It won't last. At some point, if there's some disease or something's wrong or something's not there and God's not in it, it will get exposed. I can't say that maybe 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years. One day, it gets shown for what it is. I just want you to know that. And there's something else, though. Just because something is smaller doesn't mean that it's healthy or that it's growing either, because I've been a part of that. I've experienced that as well. Just because something's smaller doesn't mean that it's more of God. Because God grows things. And it can be very unhealthy and not growing in the ways that God would want it to grow. I'll give you an example of this. In my backyard, if you came over to my house, when I moved here 12 years ago, I put in natural grass in my backyard because I didn't know any better, okay, when I moved here. And I thought, oh, finally you left California and I can have a yard and I want grass back here and I'm going to cut the grass. And then, the yard work sets in. So I set my water in my natural grass. I set the water so that it just watered it enough to barely keep the grass alive, but that I wouldn't have to pull out the lawnmower and ever cut it. You know what I'm talking about? There's like a point where it's going to stay alive and it's a little green, but it isn't really going to grow. And the fertilizer, I just want to keep it alive, but I don't want to actually have to manage or deal with this thing that's growing. You know what I'm talking about? Same with like your drip system. You're like, how can I just barely keep these plants alive? But then I'll have to go and prune them and everything like that. Y'all never do that, okay? But I'm just trying to tell you, this can be very much what churches become over time. It's a whole lot easier just to find a place where you could sit back and not deal with growth, to manage everything in your life, to just be comfortable. You know what I'm talking about? But I look at this church, and I tell you, the Apostle Paul and Apollos, who spent their years of their life in this church, and it was crazy, and there's all kinds of problems. Their lives would have been so much easier if they had just stayed back in Ephesus or stayed in Jerusalem and not have to deal with all this craziness, all these people, and what God was growing. But they didn't do that because they wanted to be a part of what God was doing. They wanted to be a part of what God was growing. They wanted to fulfill that role that God had given to them. That's what they wanted for this church in Corinth. They wanted them to move forward and grow numerically and spiritually and maturity. They wanted all of that growth that God could bring for this church. It's easier just to sit back. I feel that. I'm really excited about our plans and what we're going to talk about here in a moment and what we're planning to do, but there's part of me that's just like, oh, brother, right? More people, more problems, and more, But that leads to one other scripture I want to share with you that really helps me. It gives us a lot of wisdom. If we're going to farm for God, what is that going to look like? Look at Proverbs chapter 27. Proverbs chapter 27. The Proverbs are one of my favorite parts of Scripture. When I was younger, I loved to study Proverbs, loved to reflect on them, think about them. Young people here, one of the things you could do every month, you could read a proverb, like a chapter out of Proverbs every day of the month. It's a great thing to do. You could do it multiple times a year. Proverbs are wise sayings. Because God has created this earth and this world and people and the way we interact with each other. He created it with wisdom. He created it with repeatability. He created this earth so that it's predictable, what can happen, what oftentimes happens. So the Proverbs are general truths about life, so that when you line your life up with the way God has created this world, you can experience a better life. That's what they're really about. How to be skillful in living in this earth that God created. As you know, King Solomon wrote many of these Proverbs. There are other people in the royal court. And ultimately, the Proverbs, even though many of the Proverbs are about daily life and normal life, they really were intended for kings to learn from, and princes and princesses. Of course, common people would be learning them as well. But these were really wise sayings to lead also, and to know where things are going. And that's part of the imagery here, because what we're going to read in this proverb is of shepherding and goat herding and a farmer who's working a farm in Israel. So here's a picture. You know what happens in Israel? It's very dry there, but they get rainy seasons just like we do. We get monsoons, and then all of a sudden, boom. You can drive right over the mountains over here, and the grass is like this tall. I drive my 4Runner through it, and it's as high as the windows in the vehicle. All of a sudden, we get these grasses. You look over in the mountains, it's green all of a sudden. And so in Israel, you got to take advantage of that. Here's another picture. When that growth comes on the hills, as a farmer, you got to jump on that opportunity. Here's another picture of a shepherd. When you see the hills are green, it's time to move the flocks. It's time to move them. So look at Proverbs 27, verse 23. Know well the condition of your flocks. And the way Proverbs work, the second line repeats the first in a different way to try to really drive it home. Know well the condition of your flocks and pay attention to your herds. That's another way of saying the same thing. Pay really close, really know your herds. Really know your animals. A good shepherd takes a sheep down by the water. Are my sheep hungry? I need to feed them. Are they healthy? Are they sick? I need to intervene. I need to do something. Are they going to reproduce? And what's going to happen? I need to know all these things if I'm a farmer. I need to pay really close attention to my animals. Why? Verse 24, because riches are not forever. The way God has created this world, if you're a farmer and you don't pay close attention to your animals, there's no guarantee that next year you're going to have as big of a farm. You got to really work it. You got to really pay attention to it. Riches are not forever. Nor does a crown endure literally from generation to generation. There's no guarantee 20 years from now that your farm's going to be the same. And you can see here the regality of this, the crown, because this is something in the ancient Near East that was often spoken of a farmer or of a shepherd. That a king, a really good king, a really good leader would shepherd his people. He was like a shepherd to them. You know, Jesus is our good shepherd. It comes out of this same imagery. And so the proverb is saying, riches aren't forever. Your influence, your growth, your farm, and expanding your farm, that isn't going to last just naturally. You've got to really pay attention to it. Nor does a crown endure to all generations. Whatever influence that you have, that isn't going to just naturally continue next year, the next year, and the next year. You've got to pay really close attention to what's happening on your farm. You've got to really know your animals. You've got to know what is going on. You need to be really skilled as a farmer. So what does that mean? Look at verse 25. If the grass is removed, so it literally says there, if the grass is removed, the new growth is seen. And if the herbs of the mountains are gathered in, the lambs will be for your clothing. And the goats will bring the price of the field. And there will be goat's milk enough for your food, for the food of your household, and sustenance for your literally milkmaids. You're like, what in the world does this have to do with Grace Church? Okay. If you're a really wise farmer, and you know that God has created this earth, and He's created with repeatability, and you can get in line with that, and you can know that, then as a farmer, when the rains come, it's time to move. When the grass grows, then move your flocks there. And when they eat that and it's removed, then guess what? It rains again, and the grass grows. And you can harvest that. If the herbs of the mountains are gathered in, that means harvest them. When there's extra grass, you harvest all of that, and then you have fodder. You have straw. You have hay to be able to feed your animals later on, and you can take care of them. And if you do that, and you notice what God is providing for you, and you take advantage of that, and you don't let it go to waste, the lambs then will be for your clothing. They're going to produce all kinds of wool for you, so now you have clothing for your family, for all of your servants, all of your workers that you have on your farm, and the goats will bring the price of a field. Your animals are going to reproduce, and there's going to be more and more and more animals. You can take even a chunk of them and sell them over here, and guess what? You can buy more land for your farm. You can add and expand it. You can grow it. But God's providing for this all the way. And there will be goat's milk enough for your food. This is a beautiful picture. It may seem a little strange, but if you ever look on a label of milk, it's full of sugar. It's really, really sweet. And in Israel, they didn't have sugar and everything. So just take in that milk. It is so sweet. And it's overflowing. You get the picture here. There will be goat's milk enough for your food. You'll have plenty for the food of your whole household. Everybody in your family is able to enjoy it. And sustenance even for the milkmaids. The milkmaids who are milking all the goats. There's so much milk that takes care of them. And you can have more milkmaids. You can have more people working on the farm. You can hire more people. It just goes on and on and on and on and on. If you're a wise farmer. If you really pay attention to what God's doing, and you act and you move on it. And go back to those first verses again. Look at the verse. Know well the condition of your flocks and pay attention to your herds. Pay close attention to what God is doing. For riches are not forever. If you don't grow and you don't move forward and you don't adjust and you aren't flexible enough and you can't take advantage of when God puts something before you, then guess what? And you sit back and you're like me. If you came over to my house right now and looked at my backyard, my grass is completely dead. That's what happens. If you don't work the farm and you don't stay ahead and keep moving and keep doing things, right? It just dies away. Nor does a crown endure to all generations. Whatever influence you have over people, it's going to come to an end. And that leads us to what these next weeks are really about for us as a church. We are growing. God has grown us to a point where we need to enlarge the field, if you want to picture it that way. I don't need to tell you about that here. You know it here in our church. You can look around this room. This room's first service. I don't know if there were even this many seats in first service here in our church. And we just packed as many seats in here as we could and just had the fire people check it like this last week. We've put as many seats in here as we can. If you walk around to our kids' rooms today, they're absolutely full. They're full. In fact, our nursery, sometimes they have to flip the sign over and say, we're full. We can't take it anymore. And our influence for God and the work that God has given us to do, we need to be wise about it. We need to be wise farmers. And there is no guarantee that it will last. And let me tell you, you and I need to act, because when God provides the opportunity, we have the responsibility to do it, not only for us, but if you look back in that previous verse, for the sake of future generations. It might be all kind of like cool for us, and we're comfortable, and let's just kind of do this. But let me tell you, the one thing our town needs more than anything else, the thing that we need in our town more than an Outback, okay, more than anything else, is a healthy, vibrant church that helps people to believe in Jesus Christ and helps people to become more like Jesus Christ. What we're doing here is the most valuable thing for the future of our town and for future generations in our town. New babies are being born here in our town every day. Their schools are full. 12 years ago, we didn't even have Walden Grove High School. We didn't have Copperview Elementary. We didn't have Anzatro. We didn't have all these different schools. And now they're brimming with kids. There's so many teenagers, so many children. And for the sake of future generations, when God opens up the possibility and there's growth that we can take advantage of and we can move, we need to do it. This proverb says, pay close attention, watch what God is doing, and get in line with it. And the future generations depend on it. It's so easy to just get settled and manage everything to our own taste. But here it is. I'm convinced, and our church leadership is convinced, that this is the time to build a children's building for our church. This is the time. We talked about it, by the way, last year, and it wasn't the right time. It wasn't the right time. But God is growing our church. Things are happening, and we really believe that this is the moment. This is the time. And so our ushers are actually going to pass out a brochure to you right now. Really quick. So just grab a stack and pass it down. And as we do that, I know you're going to want to read everything in there. Okay, immediately. But as they pass it out, let me tell you, I am excited for the future of our church, because I know that we can all be a part of growing this church. I know that we can reach more people for Jesus Christ. I dream of one day having this children's building, and we will have hundreds and hundreds of children's lives that are impacted by what we're doing. We're going to open up this auditorium as well, and that'll provide more space for adults. But let me tell you, you can imagine in the future years, there's going to be families who say, even parents who say, I think this would be really good for my kids to go to church. Some of you may have done this, and then they start coming to church here and they realize, you know what, I'm the one that needs a relationship with God. I'm the one that needs to believe. I need to grow as a Christian. And so I'm excited about the future. It's not hard to look around here for the need for it. Our kids are packed, and so we have like over 100 children here on a Sunday morning, and they have 4 classrooms. Just so you all get a picture of this. We have 30 middle schoolers on a Sunday morning, and they have one room. One small room, honestly. It's small. And if you know how middle schoolers smell, it's just not the greatest thing. Okay. Just the boys. Okay, I got 2 of them, and I'm like, get in the shower already. Okay. We're running out of space here in the auditorium. If you came here on a Sunday and you were new, some of you may have been new this morning, and you check in your kids for the first time, and you're running late, and then, like, the only seats are right up at the very front, and you're like, really? I'm new, and I got to sit right here in the front? This is awkward. That's kind of where we're at here as a church. It's not as inviting as we'd like it to be. So here's our plan. We want to build a 15,000 square foot children's building. It'll be just to the north of the playground. You'll be tempted to look there at the plan, and we don't know the floor plan that's in there. We've already adjusted that a little bit. The exterior, we're still working on that. This is all quite preliminary. We're just now working with the town too on permitting. We're going to start drawing up construction documents, all those things here in these next weeks. But the idea is to build a 15,000 square foot children's building. It will be especially designed for children's. And the biggest point is that we will have an awesome space for kids. And I don't know that there's anything better that we could do for the young families here in our town than to build an awesome space that communicates that we love their children. It'll be big enough to handle 300 kids on a Sunday morning during one of the services. Enough space so that one day, I want to tell you why we're building it this big, is we're designing it to be big enough so that one day if we max out our property here with the future auditorium, with as many adults as we're allowed to have on the property, then this building will be big enough to accommodate all the children for that. And in the meantime, our middle schoolers will also be using one of the large theaters right off of the main lobby, one of the big theater rooms that are in it. And our high schoolers can come back and use that on Sunday evenings. We'll also have some additional space. There's a new lobby, restrooms, check-in stations, big hallways, bathrooms, lots of bathrooms for kids. And inside of the building, it'll be specially designed for them, decorated for kids so that it communicates truths about God to them. It'll be fantastic. So it's all going to have a modern Southwest industrial look, and we're going to refurbish this building to match that, okay, with kind of unique materials on the outside. And I don't know if you've seen buildings like that. I'll show you some more in these next weeks. And we're going to open up this auditorium. We think we'll be able to get another 200 seats in here. We'll be able to, this was all designed as a big box so that it could one day be opened up. We've already run all of the piping for our AV equipment so that we can relocate it to the back of the room. It's already there in our slab. Everything was designed that way. So these walls can come out. Our lobby will be twice as big. We're going to have to add on to the bathrooms a little bit. You may be wondering some of those things. So that's all being designed right now as well. We're anticipating the total cost of everything is going to be $2.1 million. You may go like, whoa, Crazy. That might sound like wow, and it is a wow. But we've put already over $3 million into this property. We have about $1 million in debt. Our goal is to raise $1.4 million in 33 months. That's what Here We Grow is all about, to the end of 2019. And as a short-term goal, we anticipate that we'll actually be able to break ground and start construction as soon as we initially receive $400,000. And that may seem overwhelming. When everyone participates and everyone gets involved, it's incredible. These are very doable things that we're talking about here. And you can see it there on the chart. When families get involved over the course of these next 33 months, it's very, very doable. And that will give us more space to grow. And growth is good. I think we all need to learn to be able to say that. Growth is exciting. Growth is something to look forward to. Growth is something that God does. He grows this church. And we would be foolish not to expand this field so that God can grow and God can grow people. And now is really the right time to do it. So the next 3 Sundays, we're going to prepare our hearts for this effort. We're going to learn to be wise farmers. So here we grow. That's what we're going to talk about. And we'll wrap it all up on March 5th, just a few Sundays from now. We're going to have a shorter service. We're going to actually go out on the property where the children's building is going to be. We're going to pray together and get your pictures taken right there together, right in where the future building is going to be. And we're going to have a big barbecue that day to celebrate everything. So mark that date on your calendar, March 5th. We're going to have a great luncheon out here together and have barbecue and just have a great day as a church family. What you can do right now is just to start praying. Start praying for this effort. Pray that God would bless it. Pray that God would provide. And you can all start to pray for yourselves too. God, show me. How can I get involved in what you're doing? I'm a co-worker on your field. Your field is the church and the people and new people that are coming in. You're growing it. You're growing it. Sometimes it's a little crazy, but you're growing it, and I want to be a part of it. God, show me what my part would be. I'm actually going to be getting around personally to every small group in our church and every group, all kinds of groups in our church that meet here, and presenting this and talking and trying to answer questions. If you've got questions, make sure you look for someone with a t-shirt like this. Make sure you look out in the lobby at the kiosk. There are people there that can help begin to answer questions. And we're convinced in our church that this is the time to grow. This is the time to move forward. This is the time to take that step. So here we grow. We want to make more space for new people to be a part of what God is doing, growing people. So we're going to close with a song about what God does, that God grows things. And the greatest thing of all, we talked about this morning, when you think of the future of our town, you think of where things are going, the things that you look forward to the most, I want to tell you what God's doing right here in Grace Church and growing our church to have a healthy, vibrant, effective church in our town. It is the most important thing for people. It's the most important thing. God grows. What God does is good. And we want to get on board with what he's doing. So would you stand with us? We're going to sing a song about Jesus Christ to close.